So this is not the video that I was intending on shooting right now. I was all set, ready to go to shoot a different video, and then just before I started I read an article on Petapixel. It made my blood boil, so that other video was put on the back burner while we discuss this one. Can't even believe this is a topic that we're having to discuss in this day and age, but apparently it is. So the article is centered around a Reddit post from a student at a university in North Carolina who shared a photo of their photography course syllabus in which it states students are not allowed to use an 18 to 55mm kit lens because they're not good enough. I'm just going to give you a second now to get the anger and the cursing out at the screen before we get on to how fucking ridiculous this idea is. So the syllabus post states, no 18 to 55 kit lens. You are talented enough by this point to not compromise your image quality by using these subpar lenses. Student work from this class has been licensed commercially as stock photography, but if you shoot with an 18 to 55mm, you are putting your work at a serious disadvantage quality-wise. You are not required to buy a different lens, but you are required to use something other than this lens. You should do everything within your power to never use these lenses again. So my advice to anyone who was considering signing on to that particular course at that particular university would be go somewhere else, because that is a batshit mentality to have. I'm not going to stand here and say the 18 to 55mm lenses are the best lenses on the market. Obviously they're not. They're entry level. The clue's kind of in the name that they're a kit lens with an entry level camera, but they're not that bad. Now I have seen this before with some freelance photography agencies. I've worked with a couple of companies where they have said as part of the stipulations that within the equipment list you're not allowed to have 18 to 55mm kit lenses. But they are for doing professional paid photography work, so that company obviously has somewhat of a reputation to behold. When in reality, an 18 to 55mm kit lens will get that job done absolutely fine, and no one would know the difference. What's more alarming here is this is a fucking university. It's not a company providing photography services. You're meant to be educating these kids on how best to go about taking photos. And the fucking worst mentality you should be drilling into them so early on is all the gear and no idea. It would be one thing to say, we wouldn't recommend using an 18 to 55 because the aperture range is quite restrictive, or the focal range doesn't really suit the kind of stuff that we're going to be learning about. But to turn around and say, don't use that lens because it's not good enough is beyond belief, frankly. I can't put it into words, especially if they're not providing a suitable alternative. Because all they've said is you don't need to go and buy a replacement lens, a different lens, but you're not using it an 18 to 55. Well, what if an 18 to 55 is the only thing you've got? You're either having to rent one out constantly, which would cost a fortune, or you're going to buy one. So to turn around and say, we're not prepared to teach you unless you've got this particular level of gear is fucking backwards, because you're asking then students who, let's be honest, some of them aren't exactly going to be rolling in cash anyway, to then fork out more money for equipment that they're not able to fully utilize because you haven't taught them how yet. And it's been proven multiple times that kit lenses are able to produce perfectly good results in the right hands. There are so many videos floating around YouTube and other platforms showing professionals versus amateurs where they swap gear, and the professional takes the amateur's gear and the amateur takes the professional's gear, and they go out to the same locations at the same time and shoot the same things. And guess what? The professional always produces the better results with the worst gear. Why? Because they know how to use it. Although, for anyone who doesn't know me, I do enjoy finding loopholes in things. And there are a couple of pretty good loopholes to that particular dumbass rule, for in case anyone out there is considering that particular course at that particular university. First and foremost would be don't get a Canon or a Nikon, get a Sony instead, because their kit lens is a 16-50. I mean, if they think the 18-55s are bad, the 16-50 is even worse. But hey, if it's not an 18-55, they're okay with it. I mean, the stupid thing is, they wouldn't accept you taking a Canon DSLR with an 18-55, but presumably they would accept you taking a Canon DSLR with the 18-135. And yet, between that margin, between that window of 18-55mm, the two lenses are pretty much identical. The only real advantage to the 135 is you've got that longer focal length. Or option two, if you already own a Canon or a Nikon DSLR, get yourself onto somewhere like eBay and buy yourself a cheap old super zoom lens like this Sigma 18-250mm, because I can promise you between 18-55mm, the image quality on this is worse than an 18-55. But as long as it's not an 18-55mm focal length, the university won't mind. Or find a really old, fully manual 8mm fisheye lens and see how well the tutor copes with that one. Like, I teach beginner classes, not students or anything like that, but I do run beginner classes. I don't hold people back based on what equipment they've got. If people want to turn up with a smartphone, we'll go with it because the fundamentals are still the same. At that point, it's not about producing images that look professional. It's about understanding the concepts and the philosophies behind what makes professional images look the way they do. And you do not need a $2,000 lens to learn about composition or fucking lighting. I think we'll leave it there because I'm getting rather wound up again. So what do you make of this particular article? Leave your thoughts and comments in the box down below. While you're down there, if you enjoyed this video and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe button because it really helps support the channel, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.